Ba-da-da-da-da-da. Dungeons and Dopamine.
Hi, welcome to Dungeons and Dopamine. I'm surprised, Jess, we're recording.
I was like thinking, it sounded like you forgot her name for a second, and then I forgot to speak.
What's wrong with Bree? Oh, this is my turn. I understand. I do that a lot. Yep.
That's Bree, I'm Jess.
And this is episode 54?
Yeah, and it hasn't gotten any better.
And we will continue to have the same opening every week until we die.
Which might be soon, in my case.
Because I killed her.
Dear. The gauntlet has been thrown down. I don't know what the gauntlet's doing. Who even brought a gauntlet? What is a gauntlet?
How did it get here?
Take it back. I don't have the money for this.
This sounds destructive.
I'm actively working on fixing all the destruction. And by actively working, I mean I have people here who are actively working.
I mean, it is actually active, yes.
Speaking of that, just in case we hit a point where I can't edit the noise out, you might hear some construction sounds. But that's a good thing.
Because soon we'll be able to record in our actual office. I say our, because it's ours.
It will be, yes.
I guess Jessica can work there, like, on her normal job when I'm not here. But it is our office.
Our office. The Dungeons and Dopamine office. The Dungeons and Dopa-office.
Dopa-office.
Dopa-office. We'll get better at this.
Yeah.
I mean, not this, like, podcasting.
Because
clearly
that ship has sailed.
We can see at this point, after a year and 2 episodes, that nothing's gone up.
Our viewers.
Our listeners have gone way up.
Have gone up.
Our
yes.
viewers also. Wink.
Oh, your poor house. Just all those weirdos out there all the time listening and watching us record.
I wish they'd leave money.
just dollars.
Y'all did great this week. $1. Some quarters.
Just left on, just 4 quarters left on your porch every once in a while.
This is all I had in my truck, so I left it here on the porch.
This is what was in my pocket, like 2 pennies and some lint.
Look, it'd be better than nothing.
True. You know who else could leave you trinkets on your porch?
Santa?
It would be a weird place for Santa to leave you.
Dog man of Michigan?
Yes! Actually, strangely enough, something came up about the dog man in my... Not really, but I'm going to connect it anyway.
I thought you were going to say in my recent life, and I was like, or like in my real life, which, I mean, I guess like...
this is my fake life.
Is this the real life, or is this just fantasy? Are you caught in a landslide?
No escape from reality.
Open your eyes. Look up
to the skies.
See. I'm just... I'm sorry. I'm not sorry.
I keep waiting for you to stop, but no. No, you don't.
This whole episode has now just become us repeating Journey lyrics like it's a conversation.
Was that Journey? Or was that Queen?
Oh, yeah,
that
you're
was
right.
Queen. Even I know that was
Sorry.
Queen. And I am awful at music.
I do. No, I'm just going to switch it to Journey lyrics. So now I run to you with open arms.
Just be a voiceover of you speaking Journey lyrics. You'll still be able to hear me in the background.
I'll also play Queen in the background. Like, I'll play We Are the Champion. And just to really... I don't think we have the rights to do that.
I'm kind of impressed you came up with a Journey song off the top of your head and just launched into some lyrics. I did not peg you for a Journey fan.
Did you know that I really like Journey?
No, I did not know that.
I also could give you some sick Beach Boys hits.
Well, I knew that. You've always loved the Beach Boys.
But yeah, I'm a Journey fan.
I only know the one Journey. I mean, I probably know all the Journey songs, but I can only think of the one Journey song.
Which one? Every time I hear
Just
that
a
song
small
now,
town girl.
I think of that scene from whatever Will Ferrell movie where he's like, "Tell me more about him. Where's he from?"
I don't know what you're
Living
talking
in
about.
a lonely world.
Oh, yep. Okay, I do remember that. You've got his voice down really well, too.
Can I tell you a dirty secret? This might be like an unpopular opinion.
Yes.
I don't like Will Ferrell.
Me neither.
I should have known.
I like Will Ferrell in Step Brothers and
Elf?
Anchorman.
Oh, okay.
I actually don't like the movie Elf.
No?
No.
I don't mind it. It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's not my favorite, but it's an okay Christmas thing.
Yeah,
you know.
like it's like the 5th or 6th Christmas movie we watch.
Sure. Yeah. Always the Grinch first for us.
At least 3 times. Well, because there's 3 different versions, so.
Right. And Benedict Cumberbatch is the voice of the Grinch in one of them. Did you know he got kidnapped?
What?
Seriously. So anyway. I have to fact check and verify that that's actually true, but apparently he got stopped in another country and like his car had broken down and these guys pulled up and they were threatening them until he just handed them everything he had on him in his like wallet and stuff, and then they left. But yeah, so
That's
apparently,
crazy. I
I don't know if he got taken to a new location because I feel like that's the definition of being kidnapped.
Yeah. Really, he just got mugged.
Gently. This is a gentle mugging.
They were like, "We're gonna kidnap you," and he was like, "No thanks. Here's some stuff." And they were like, "Okay."
You don't. Oh,
I wish I was famous so that if I ever was attempted kidnapped, I could give them money. I got nothing.
I just wish I could kidnap Benedict Cumberbatch.
That's how you knew about this story.
He's in the closet, which is really a feat since there's no door and you can see into my
True.
closet.
Pedro's gonna be so jealous.
It's the goal.
It's the long con. This is how she gets Pedro here by kidnapping other celebrities.
So, I've completely derailed this.
So speaking of kidnapping, let me tell you about fairies. So last week I talked kind of very broadly about fairy lore and fae lore. I covered different types of fae, their magical powers, where you might find them, the history and the origin stories of where fairy lore comes from. And then this week I want to talk more about the kind of fun stuff, the actual stories, and I'll end with some tips and tricks on how to either attract fairies or get rid of them.
No, guys, she told me that at the end of this, she gets really serious. I might be taking that out of context.
And
but
everyone dies.
if you're not careful, they'll come for you.
I will preface this with letting everyone know that these are just random things I found on the internet. Nothing here should be taken as like strict fact. I did not find these in, approved sociology journals or peer-reviewed articles or anything. This is just some internet lore for your entertainment.
Bree's pulling a Jessica.
I just wanted to read fun stories this week, okay? So I actually just found a really cute website that has a bunch of fairy stories. And it starts with Tweeny Bunting, which is a fairy story. And Tweeny Bunting was a lost fairy. There are many good things a fairy can... I'm just reading this straight out. I won't do that with all of these, but this one is short enough. I'm just going to read it straight out because the wording was... Tweeny Bunting was a lost fairy. There are many good things a fairy can do, and it is very, very sad when a fairy is lost. Poor Tweeny Bunting was sitting on a mushroom, his 2 wings were drooping, and his face was all ready to cry. One way to know children from fairies is that fairies do not know how to cry.
Also,
Did you know that?
Can I just throw out there that if a child sits on a mushroom, it will break into bits and just be stuck on their clothes.
That is also another clue on the difference between a fairy and a child. If it can sit on a mushroom, it is not a child. Surprise!
I really appreciate this. I was very confused.
So while Tweenie Bunting was sitting on the mushroom, ready to cry but not crying because fairies cannot cry.
Sure.
It was an autumn day and winter was coming fast. So Jack Frost came rushing over the hill. He had a red face and was out of breath. When he saw the poor lost fairy, he stopped short in surprise. Tweenie Bunting could not tell Jack Frost anything about himself, for he had lost his memory.
Aww.
To every question he was asked, he said, "I forget." "What are you going to do?" cried Jack Frost. "You can't stay here all night. You are shivering with cold." "I should like to come and live with you," said Tweenie Bunting. "Perhaps I could help you do something." And Jack Frost said, "Oh, I make pictures for little boys and girls. I make pictures on the window panes on winter nights when they are fast asleep in their beds." So Jack Frost took Tweenie Bunting to his dear little house in the land of the snows and made him a cozy little jacket of wren's feathers and taught him how to do window pane pictures. And now every time Jack Frost goes to make pictures on the children's window panes, Tweenie Bunting goes with him.
That's very cute.
It was just a cute, and I will be honest with you, this was the pretty much only cute story I found about the fairies.
I do like it. I'm sort of sad for Tweenie's family.
That he just ran off with Jack Frost. And at the end, it specifically mentions that none of the children ever know about Tweenie Bunting. Jack Frost completely takes the he's the window frost guy. He never mentions that Tweenie Bunting helps him. The next one, which I'm not going to read because it's very long, but it's called How Peeping Kate Was Pisky Led.
Okay, wait, though. We're already starting out kind of touchy here.
And the basics of the story for Peeping Kate is that she was on her way somewhere on Halloween night. Of course, it's always on Halloween night. And stumbled upon what she thought was a rider on a horse. And she was very tired from her walk and tried to get this rider to basically pick her up and bring her back to her community or her village. And the closer she got, the more, the angrier she got at this man that was not speaking back when she asked his name. And then when she gets up there, she realizes it's basically just a statue in the middle of the woods. And then she's too tired to make it back to her village, so she lays down in a pen somewhere on some straw. And when she wakes up, she's essentially in this fairy dream where she's confused. She's not where she should be, so the landscape has changed. And then she stumbles upon these fairies, and she's kind of hiding and kind of peeking at them. And eventually they see her. But from there, it kind of goes along the same story like the Lord of the Rings. So she stumbles upon these fairies in the woods, and she secretly is trying to watch them and see what they do, and they find her and they scold her, and then she runs away and they realize that she's spying, and all the lights go out. So the lights wink out. The lights vanished and a handful of dust was thrown into her eyes, which blinded her for a moment so she could not see.
Rude.
And then she heard the pisky squeak. "I spy thee face, old Peeping Kate. I'll serve thee out early and late." And she does it 2 more times until they're finally dude, leave us alone.
Is she called Peeping Kate because she's peeping on the fairies?
Yes.
Not because she goes through town and peeps in windows?
Correct. She is not caught peeping on other people. She is caught peeping on the fairies.
Okay, sorry, Kate. My bad. I misunderstood. With a name like Peeping Kate, you really ought to warn people.
I'll remember that next time I'm going to talk about Kate.
It's good, thanks.
And then they disappear. She wanders off again. She finds the fairies again. She peeps on them again. And at this point, the fairies turn on her and tackle her. And she's on the ground, covering her head. And she's like, "No, I'm sorry, leave me alone." And they they roll her over and they're hitting her. And she's trying to beat them off with a stick. And they sing, "Seesaw pate, lie still, old Peeping Kate. Seesaw pate, here we'll ride early and late on the back of Peeping Kate." And they essentially ride her like a horse.
Oh my god. At least you got to see what the fairies were doing.
And then it ends with, Kate was almost mad with their torment when by good chance she remembered a charm that would drive away all mischievous spirits on Halloween. So she repeated it forwards and backwards, and in a twinkling all the Spriggans fled screeching away, the Pisky galloping after them. Then she got on her feet and looked around. She saw by the starlight of a clear frosty morning that the place to which she had been Pisky led was a green spot near the Gump, where the folks said the Spriggans held their nightly revels. And her hat and her shoes and her basket were gone, and poor Kate, barefooted and bareheaded, had to hobble home as best she could.
And she probably got beat by her parents for losing her shoes.
Right? And then,
I really prefer the stories in which Peeping Kate... I mean, well, okay, if she's peeping, gets arrested and put in jail and serves her due fair course.
Not that she gets attacked by fairies and
ridden
like a horse.
Which also, like, I don't really want to delve into the real meaning there, but makes me wonder.
Mm-hmm.
So...
And we'll talk a little bit about that. The next story is The Yellow Dwarf. And the Yellow Dwarf is a typical, what I considered kind of a typical fairy. It's almost like a Rumpelstiltskin story.
Okay, sure.
There's a fair maiden, and she doesn't want to get married. She's turning down all the marriage proposals. So her mother, the queen, goes to find the desert fairy to ask her why her daughter is so stubborn and what can she do to get her to marry. But on her way there, she stumbles instead upon the Yellow Dwarf, who tells her, "Oh, you don't have to worry about that. I'll marry your daughter. Just let me marry her." And the queen is like, I don't know. And so
I'm really glad she didn't just immediately agree.
She was like, yeah, that's a great idea. No, the queen says, no, I don't want you to marry my daughter.
Good.
And
Good job, queen.
So he takes everything that the queen has brought with her, which includes like some cake or something to distract some lions that she was going to have to get through to get to the fairy. So the Yellow Dwarf is basically like, okay, but what are you going to do now? I took your stuff. And she's like, oh, I guess you can marry my daughter.
Oh my gosh.
And he sends her home. And she wakes up at home and she's like, I don't really want to tell my daughter this. So she just like doesn't do anything about it, which you know is always a great idea when you're dealing with the fae. And at that point, the daughter starts to settle down and she starts to get eyes for a local king. And the Yellow Dwarf pops up and he's like, you can't marry this guy. You're already promised to marry me. And she's like, but I don't wanna. And the Yellow Dwarf disappears, and so the fair maiden goes to this king that she wants to marry, and she says, I really want to marry you, but apparently this dwarf has a claim on me. So then they go to try to convince the dwarf they go to try to find the fairy again to convince the dwarf to leave the fair maiden alone. But of course that doesn't work. Instead they run into the Yellow Dwarf again, and he steals their cake again, and they can't beat the lions.
Could they just like kill the lions and have or the dwarf?
Yeah.
I feel like
instead the fair maiden is forced to stay with the dwarf, and the desert fairy that the queen was going to see in the first place falls in love with the handsome king and kidnaps him. So now we have a kidnapped king and a kidnapped fair maiden, and they are, of course, at this point, totally in love and want to figure out how to get back together. So the king pretends that he is in love with the desert fairy to gain her trust, and then
I'm not gonna lie, I did think that the desert fairy was a man.
Nope, the desert fairy is a woman in this case. So he gains her trust. She starts to give him a little bit more freedom, where of course he then runs into a mermaid, because why not?
Why wouldn't this story need to get more convoluted?
Yeah. And the mermaid wants to help. So the mermaid... The overjoyed king promised to do whatever the mermaid should direct, and seating himself by her desire upon her fish's tail, they sailed away together over the rolling sea. So they head back to the yellow dwarf and the fair maiden, and they're like, hey, I'm back, I'm here to save you. Except, of course, the princess saw him be taken by the fairy queen, or the desert fairy, and now thinks that he is in love with the desert fairy. So she's like, I don't want you anymore, you broke my heart. And he's like, no, I've been trying to get back to you. And then in definite Romeo and Juliet fashion, they both die.
What happens to the mermaid?
She just swims off. She's like, this is fine. Good luck.
But she didn't help.
It says, thus ended the fate of these two faithful lovers, whom the mermaid very much regretted, but as... Oh, sorry, I missed a part of the story. Awful at this. The mermaid gave the king a sword. Said, as long as you hold this sword, no one can defeat you. So he, like, gets through all of these awful things to get to his princess, and she gives him the line, well, I don't know if I really want you, and he drops the sword. The yellow dwarf shows up, kills the king because he has dropped his sword, and then the fair maiden kills herself because her lover has died at her feet. You know, typical Romeo and Juliet. And again, the mermaid is like, oh, that's sad.
Girl.
Says, thus ended the fate of these two faithful lovers, whom the mermaid very much regretted, but as all her power lay in the sword, she could only change them into two palm trees, which, preserving a constant and mutual affection, still fondly unite their branches together. So that's why there are double palm trees.
Well, that's something.
Just a couple more, and this one's super long, so I won't read it, but it's basically the origin story of gemstones. Oh. So it's about a beautiful princess who had some fairies that apparently were friendly with her, and she was getting ready to get married and wanted the most beautiful things in the world for her dress and her look. So she has the perfect dress, she's beautiful, everything is perfect. It says, my dress is lovely. It was cut out of a rainbow on purpose for me and trimmed with the edge of a sunset cloud. But what am I to wear in my hair? First they bring her a bunch of flowers, but she waits so long to decide which flower that all the flowers die. So then they have to go find something else. So they find some rocks, basically. It's three fairies. They find some rocks, and the first one takes one rock and goes to the ocean. And he talks to a mermaid or a fish or whoever.
It's probably the mermaid.
It's sword. That sword mermaid again. And says, take this to the bottom of the ocean and make this the most beautiful, darkest blue of the ocean. And that's how sapphires were born. And then the other fairy goes into the forest and he gives it to the elves or the forest creatures or whoever. And he says, make this stone the most beautiful green of the forest, with the light when the sun comes in and hits the leaves just right, the most beautiful forest green. And that's how emeralds were made. And then the third fairy is a fire fairy, and she goes to a fire nymph or whatever and gives them the stone and says, you know, make this the most beautiful glowing red like fire. And that's how rubies were made. And they bring all of these gemstones back to the beautiful princess, and she loves them all, but she's, you know, putting them in her hair, and she can't decide which one is the best, and they don't really look that well together, the three of them. They're different sizes and the colors, and it just doesn't work. And she's so devastated. How will she ever choose? And then this quiet fourth fairy comes, and he gathers all of the gemstones. So he took the three stones and flew away far up into the sky, above the princess's dark head, and above the house and trees, above the crystal mountain, even into the misty sunshine behind the clouds. Then he called to the sun fairies. Sun fairies, melt me these stones in your furnace, melt them and mix them and make them into one stone, and soften their colors with the mist of sunshine, so that my dear princess may wear them all together in her hair. And that's what they do. And that's how opals are made.
I was waiting for that one.
And so she wears the great opal in her hair on the day she marries the prince of the far land over the hill.
He's in for a treat there.
She seems super fun.
I'm just saying.
And then the last couple stories are changeling stories.
Ooh.
And I am interested to see what you think of these.
Oh, boy.
Because I have a theory on where changelings came from. So, how to find out a fairy changeling. And this is from Walter Gregor. Notes on the folklore of the northeast of Scotland. Says, if a child became cross and began to dwine, which means waste away, fears immediately arose that it must be a fairy changeling, and the trial by fire was put into operation. The hearth was piled with peat, and when the fire was at its strength, the suspected changeling was placed in front of it and as near as possible not to be scorched, or it was suspended in a basket over the fire. If it was a changeling child, it made its escape by the chimney, throwing back a word of scorn as it disappeared.
I'd like to know how many documented cases of the children leaving up the fireplace there are.
Right. And I guess I should have clarified that. So changelings are fairies that are put in place of babies. So the baby is taken and a fairy of some sort is put in its place and then raised as a human baby.
And story-wise, this happens a lot and for different reasons in different things.
So this one talks about if the baby was unbaptized. So there was like a push or a rush to get the baby baptized right away, because one of the theories was that if the baby wasn't baptized, it could be carried off and left with a changeling would be left. It says sometimes they succeeded in carrying off an unbaptized infant, and for it they left one of their own. The one left by them soon began to dwine and to fret and cry night and day. At times, the child has been saved from them as they were carrying it through the dog hole.
The dog door?
A fisherman had a fine, thriving baby. One day, what looked like a beggar woman entered the house. She went to the cradle in which the baby was lying and handled it under the pretense of admiring it. From that day, the baby did nothing but fret and cry and waste away. This had gone on for some months when one day a beggar man entered asking alms. As he was getting his alms, his eyes lighted upon the infant in the cradle. After looking on it for some time, he said, "That's not a bairn, that's an image. The bairn's been stolen." He immediately set to work to bring back the child. He heaped up a large fire on the hearth and ordered a black hen to be brought to him. When the fire was blazing at its full strength, he took the hen and held her over the fire as near as possible so as not to kill her. The bird struggled for a little, then escaped from the man's grasp and flew out by the chimney. The child was restored and throve every day afterwards.
So are they children who had like colic?
That's what it's either like colicky babies or like terrible
Maybe,
twos.
Yeah, or like disfigured or something.
Yeah.
Or like children who got sick.
Or maybe had some mental deficiencies.
Do you think it was like autism and ADHD?
Absolutely.
Because you wouldn't notice that as a baby, but as they grew. So, you know, the one where he said the lady came in and fawned over the child and then...
And that really was the case with all of them. A lot of, especially these older stories, were warning stories. Or they were either warning stories or they were explaining some unexplainable thing.
It's very, very much like all the folklore.
Yes, just like the folklore we've talked about before. Even, especially in the United States, like what are they? Not fables, or you know the stories they tell us when we're kids to try to make sure we do the right thing or we make the right choices or we're nice people. They all felt like fables to me, just warnings, or you know, don't eat fairy food, don't take food from strangers.
Don't peep on people in the woods.
Right. Don't wander in the woods late at night by yourself. Don't make deals with fairies. Don't run off and kill yourself over some king. Like they were all warnings or some sort of like supernatural, this is how gemstones are made, or this explains why we do things on this day. They were very fable or folklore-ish. Just as a side note, Morgan Le Fay, who we talked about when I talked about the Morrigan, and so she is an enchantress in like King Arthur, or I think she's King Arthur's sister or cousin or some relation. She also came up when looking up fairies. It was mentioned that in some stories she becomes the immortal Queen of Avalon, which is very similar in name to Avalon in Crescent City, which is the fairy island where Bryce goes, and where Rune took the sword from the stone all those years ago during his ordeal.
The Star Sword.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And we've talked a lot about the Mossverse and how much she's pulling from different lore. And every time I do more research, I'm finding more and more of these connections that specifically Sarah J. Maas is making in her Fae books. I don't know. It's just there's a lot.
I feel like I let you down there. Like you were waiting for something more.
Well, I
from
also
me
really like your flower drawing too.
Oh, thanks. I've been listening, but this helps me actually focus on what you're doing.
And this kind of brings me to like our more modern day Fae stories. So even as far back as Lord of the Rings and even our camping books, we still do get some warnings against the Fae. But I feel like these modern day like romancy fantasy books are really leaning heavily into either these morally gray characters, which we've talked about before, or just kind of ignoring all the warnings we've had about the Fae and making them good guys.
This is the Fae. This is their doing.
It's gotta be, right?
Yeah. The only explanation, obviously.
That's gotta be. Even, what book was it? Okay, even like Fourth Wing and Iron Flame. They're not so much Fae, but, and this is a spoiler if you haven't read Iron Flame yet, they get into her childhood folklore that everybody has been told is just fables and stories. They get into the idea that all of these fabled beings actually are alive and they do live beyond the border, and this is what's causing the issues that they're having.
Doing cover-ups.
But even in those books, those are the good guys. They're promoted as the bad guys, or they don't even exist, depending on who you're talking to. But once you get beyond the borders, they're actually the ones that help to rebuild the wards and slow down the issues. We're seeing a lot of these good guy or bad guy to good guy tropes, a lot of these romancy, people end up together and he was like the Rhysand, the evil night court, blah, 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 and turns out to be a nice guy. So just some quick ways to protect yourself against fairies. The big one that we usually talk about is iron. They are usually either allergic to iron or repelled by it or weakened by it. There are certain plants and branches that are wards against fairies. So blackberry stalks, boxwood, and rowan, which is a type of tree, and also ash. Other ways to avoid or not piss off the fairies. Obviously don't eat any food or drink that they offer, but also don't be rude when you're speaking to a fairy. Don't try to trick them because they are always going to be smarter than you. Don't accept any fairy money, especially since it's probably glamored and will turn back into nothing or acorns or something. Salt in some stories is considered...
Oh, sure. Think supernatural.
Will repel. Yep, supernatural. 3-leaf clovers can be carried as a protective charm, and 4-leaf clovers are thought to be able to break through fairy glamour. St. John's wort is apparently an herb that repels fairies. You can wear daisies or like daisy chain necklaces to protect.
Flowers in her hair. Flowers everywhere. I'm not sorry.
Primrose petals scattered outside your door. If you hear bluebells chime, it is a warning that fairies could be near. So I guess I don't really have how to attract fairies, but I have signs that fairies might be near you.
Oh.
So we have spheres of light, which we have already discussed, as to whether or not they are just dust flecks or whatever. If you see lights in the woods, do not follow them. Chilling sounds and music. Fairy rings, which we talked about last week, so when mushrooms or flowers grow in a circle. And if animals around you act weird, this one's my favorite. If beer or milk goes bad, and if candies are missing, that is a sign of fairies.
Or 8-year-olds.
Right. Flowers sprouting from bizarre places. And feeling like you're being watched while you're in the woods.
Also, bobcat. Watch it. I mean, like, I'm just saying.
For real, like.
Yeah. Like, be careful. If you feel like you're being watched, don't be like, woo!
The fairies are here.
Sexy fae man.
No, it's probably a bobcat.
Just, look big, be loud, get yourself out. Not to, like, belittle any of your topic, but
True story.
But let's protect our friends from buck.
And I can't find it now, and I'm sad I can't, but one of the stories I did read mentioned that this particular fairy comes out every 7 years. So I am pretty sure that Dogman of Michigan is actually fae.
I just punched the table. You probably could all hear that. It was an
Jessica's
accident.
very mad about this.
I didn't see that in any of my research. What a jerk.
Why was he hiding that from me?
I thought we were friends. Me and Dogman go way back.
So that's what I've got about fairies.
I love that.
A little bit of crazy stories, some good advice on how to keep them away from you, because I don't care what Rhysand sounds like in these books, you guys. We probably do not want to tempt the fae. In fact, I use that as an excuse not to have an elf on the shelf at my house.
We don't invite the fae into our house.
True story.
I love it. I'm back to Michigan. I loved that, by the way. It makes me want to punch my microphone. But also to stop and just read we were gonna watch 6.
Now we're gonna read some fairy stories. I'll just bring up some more. We'll just keep reading them.
Perfect. All right. Well, we're going back to somewhere familiar.
Michigan?
Indeed, but even more familiar. Because actually it's out of the mitten. It's up in the UP.
Oh, okay.
We're back to Marquette.
Ooh.
So, we're back to Marquette. Last time I talked about Marquette, I didn't really get into Marquette itself, so I just wanted to share a few, I thought, fun facts. It is a city in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. It's located on the shores of Lake Superior.
Where it's very cold.
And we just talked about Old Whitey's up in there. Or down in there. Whatever. It's located in Marquette County. That is not a very fun fact. It is nicknamed the best small town for adventure by USA Today, which I really liked. It is the home of NMU, Northern University. Northern Michigan University.
That's why I chose not to go there. I was afraid Jessica would never be able to pronounce it right.
Where's your best friend go to college?
That was the deciding factor.
And then I cry because it hurts so much that I can't tell people where you are. What if there's an emergency? It has the 3rd largest American city on Lake Superior. It is a major port for shipping iron ore, which seems so old. Like, I guess it makes sense that we need
still
iron.
Ship iron places? We need that for the fae, you guys.
Marquette, Michigan is the safest place you can be. And it has a population of 20,629 as of the 2020 census. If you didn't fill out your census properly and you live in Marquette, shame.
You weren't counted.
For shame.
Jerks.
You're not a part of our podcast now because you didn't do your census.
We didn't count you.
But the most important fact about Marquette, Michigan right now is that it is home to the Big Bay Lighthouse.
I love lighthouses. I love lights.
I have been, from the moment I mentioned I was going to do Michigan, every single person I talk to on like a regular basis, which is not that many,
there's like 3 of us.
There's 3 of you, and you all keep asking about lighthouses. And I was like, fine. Talk about some lighthouses. Talk about the one near Nerf University. I don't actually. Just as a disclaimer, I don't actually know how close this lighthouse is to the university. Just saying. This lighthouse, though, is called one of the most haunted lighthouses in the United States. It was built in 1896 and is actually considered the third most haunted lighthouse in the U.S. So
that means there's more.
There's
more haunted lighthouses.
I don't know if any of them are.
So it's not just the name; it's just in general today.
It's a combination of letters, apparently. I don't know if any more of them are in Michigan.
Good job.
Thank you. So this was built in, as I said, 1896 to guide ships into Big Bay. The types of ships it would guide, because it was an old-timey thing, were iron ore ships, grain ships, mined and manufactured material ships. May have actually guided our Kamloops and the 1 billion lifesavers that were on board. I did not fact check that fun thing at all. I just put my two stories together and was like, oh, cool!
This is
Those
great.
are definitely together.
Those
So
totally
please
connected.
don't quote that as a fact to anyone. And if you don't have any respect for me at this point in time, I understand. So, of course, lighthouse keepers lived in or very near to the lighthouse, because they constantly had to take care of the lighthouse. It was an oil-powered lamp, which kind of blows my mind. I don't know. That's really crazy to me.
Yeah.
The keeper's house consists of 18 rooms in a 52 by 52 foot, 2-story brick building, which seemed huge.
Yeah.
So a lot of lighthouse keepers took care of this, but the first and one of the most notable is Harry William Pryor, and he's pretty important. He was known for his dedication and love of the lighthouse. He served for 5 years. He was said to be very meticulous and very careful in keeping the lighthouse, and also kept very meticulous notes and journals, which is super great for the rest of us because
now we have this information.
Exactly. Unfortunately, was also known to be cantankerous in nature, direct quote, and had a lot of difficulties with his assistants, which, not gonna lie, it seems like it might have been his fault. I have a really fun quote from one of his journals that I wanted to share about one of his assistants. This is from his logbook. Let me preface this. I am sorry. He went on a small not vacation probably, but he had to leave the lighthouse for a while. When he came back, he wrote this. I cannot see that the assistant has done any work around the station since I left. He has not the energy to carry him down the hill, and if I speak to him about it, he makes no answer, but goes on just as if he did not hear me. He is so much under the control of his wife, he has not the heart to do anything. She has annoyed me during the season by hanging around him and hindering him from working. And she is altogether a person totally unfit to be in a place like this, as she is discontented and jealous and has succeeded in making life miserable for everyone at this station. And I just thought that was a lot.
I'm so confused as to why his assistant just doesn't speak to him. I mean, he's like, hey, I need your help. And his assistant is like, nah, I got it. Gotta go this way. Like, I thought you were gonna somehow, that was gonna be the ghost. Like his journal, he realized the ghost was his assistant.
Same, I thought so too when I first read that.
No, he's not responding. That means he's a ghost. No, he's just a jerk to his jerk boss.
Exactly.
His wife is a jerk.
So I thought that was kind of funny. I know it was probably very annoying for them at the time, but I thought it was hilarious.
He annoys me. She's always here hanging around her husband. Ugh.
Unacceptable. He had another assistant who he was really frustrated at him for his incompetence as well and his laziness, which frustrated Pryor. Finally, he got an assistant he could count on, and that was his son.
Oh, of course.
When his son was 19, he was appointed as an assistant. However, shortly after that, he slipped on the stairs and... okay, this is so hard to read because it's so gross. Sliced his leg down to the bone.
Ooh.
There are a lot
Which is bad back then.
Yes,
like,
exactly.
You don't just get some steri strips and call that a day.
Exactly. You don't get stitched up and spend a day in the hospital and go on with your life.
Right.
So there's differing accounts of if William was there or if they sought immediate treatment for George. Or some stories say that George feared his father's temper so much that he waited until he couldn't wait any longer to get help. The nearest hospital was located in Marquette, obviously, and was a 30-mile journey by boat, then on foot.
Holy cow.
So this dude had to do this and then walk to the hospital with a sliced open leg. It was awful. He was obviously admitted to the hospital. William, he wrote in his journal, he'll have to stay at the hospital for treatment. That they praise his meticulous note-taking, and then they say he wrote, he'll have to stay in the hospital for treatment. Duh! He wound up dying in the hospital of gangrene. It was bad. All right, so on June 28th, 1901, William Pryor disappeared. He was last seen walking into the woods on the grounds of the lighthouse, and despite a very extensive search, no one could find him. No one could find him. That's what I said from the beginning. I did not just fix that in post.
No corrections at all. This is live. This is live.
This is live. Guys. Yeah, we're perfect.
We never mess up.
His family, not being able to find him, left the lighthouse later that fall. So that was June. They left in the fall, so several months. About 1 year after he disappeared. 1 year after his family left. Not that it matters much, but 1 year after his family left.
But 3 months makes a difference, okay?
Absolutely. Another man who was working in the lighthouse found a corpse hanging in a tree. He had walked out and hanged himself because of probably the guilt that his son wouldn't tell him that he was hurting so bad.
So scared to tell him that he let himself die, basically.
Exactly. After their deaths, the lighthouse was kept by just random keepers, no one apparently of significance. And then in 1941, the light was automated, and they released the land.
They sent it back to the fairies. And now everything's connected, you guys.
They leased the land to the army, who stationed soldiers there for 2-week periods at a time to practice shooting, apparently, over the lake.
Sure.
It did also still function as a lighthouse. It also has whistles, the lighthouse. This is a super random fact that probably would have been far more appropriate, like, way higher up in the story.
I like knowing in the middle that it has whistles.
I also have whistles.
I do not.
Mine was terrible.
At 37 years old, can still not whistle.
The soldiers were stationed at the lighthouse, and one of the soldiers was stationed there with his wife, or his wife was in the town. There was a place called the Lumberjack Tavern. This army man thought that this soldier thought that the owner of the Lumberjack Tavern had assaulted his wife, and he, to venge his...
I don't feel so bad about mine now.
To avenge his wife, he went into town and killed the keeper of the tavern. So, basically what I'm trying to tell you is a lot of bad things happen near and on and around this lighthouse.
Yeah.
So now what we're all actually here for, because I cannot do anything at all. It is widely believed that there are 5 different ghosts that haunt the lighthouse.
What? So do the son and the father haunt?
That is, yes, 2 of them that are believed to be there.
And
also,
now the Lumberjack Tavern guy.
And several of the army men have been seen. Why do I keep calling them army men? What? I'm leaving it. Whatever. Army men.
Several of the G.I. Joes.
Exactly. Roll out, Joes. One other thing to bury the lead. It is now a B&B that we could go stay at. It was opened in 1986. It's gone through several owners. Anyway,
Here I am booking our trip.
Before we commit, let's talk about some ghost stuff.
Oh, right. Ghosts. Maybe we don't want to go there.
There are obviously paranormal activity reported by visitors and staff. Strange noises, footsteps, doors opening, closing. apparitions and ghostly figures, unexplained events like lights flickering and objects moving. It is believed that Harry, William Pryor, is one of those ghosts. People have seen a red-haired man in the mirror reflection. He was a red-haired man, which is awful. I hate that.
Poor him.
I hate...
Oh, sorry.
I didn't catch on to what you were saying. Because I was like, yeah, I would talk to look in the mirror and see a dude behind you. Freaking Ed Sheeran.
It would scare me too.
You would actually like it.
I was say, let's be honest. I adore Ed Sheeran and gingers in general.
I'm sorry. It's a mess. So
next week's episode is going to be amazing.
Right? It's gotta be. So because Pryor was actually kind of obsessed with the water, the lake, the water, he turns on the shower. So the shower or other faucets will just turn on and be running, which is awful. And I
need to get back to the water.
He's like Moana. Two separate guests have reported seeing a spirit dressed in a U.S. life-saving uniform. So an army man.
An army man uniform.
There have been reports of a tall red-headed man walking through doors. So you'll just look up and someone will walk. A red-headed man will just walk through a doorway, which is so gross. Mm-hmm. One of the former owners is quoted saying, "Every morning in the spring, he wakes me up, taps me lightly, and bids me go fishing. I know that fishing was important to a lighthouse keeper, so I have to fish every morning. I've always tried to comply." Now, like, this could just be this dude being like, "Oh, honey, no, ghost woke me. I don't want any angry ghosties.
I have to go fishing. The
okay,
ghost
bye.
said."
Oh, your mom's coming? Okay, bye. I went with the mother-in-law trope.
Yeah,
I felt like that was a classic.
I could see Zach doing that. No, I have to go. The ghost said.
The ghost said, I have to go play my guitars. There was a couple who stayed there in the 1990s. I guess it was like their honeymoon or they were celebrating an anniversary or something. The first night, they remember settling into their room, and later they were awakened by the sound of something going ping, 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 like a marble being dropped down the stairs. The next morning, in their ashtray, because back then ashtrays were a thing everywhere all the time, there was one single marble in the ashtray that had not been there before.
Ooh, I don't like that one. I can deal with people like seeing ghosts.
Sure.
Brains do weird things, lights do weird things.
Can write things off.
And whatever, but things showing up that weren't there before, that always gets me.
Gonna be a no for me.
No, thank you.
One of the former owners admitted she heard him once. She said, "I think he's gone now, though. I had a conversation with him in the kitchen." And she went on to kind of explain the event. Said she woke up one night and heard slamming cupboards in the kitchen. Said, "I thought it was a drunk coming back from the tavern." She said, "I have a temper, so I stormed up, but no one was there. So I figured it must be Will, the old lighthouse keeper." She said, "Okay, I know ghosts don't like change, but we're changing things. I have to get up in the morning and make breakfast, so cut it out." Then I slammed a cupboard and went back to bed. The next morning, all the cupboard doors were closed, and we've never had a reputable report of Will since.
I love that this old man haunted this lighthouse for decades. And then this lady was like, "Listen here. Go to bed. Knock it off." And he was like,
tired.
Okay.
This is a fun one. So, once again, this is, and I kind of already told this story, but it ends real nice. One overnight guest repeated seeing the reflection of a man wearing a keeper's hat standing behind her in the mirror. Other guests have awakened from a deep sleep to find a man gazing at them from the end of their beds.
Nope. No, thank you. We can't stay there. Sorry.
I know. I get it. Maybe we could visit it and look at it and buy something from the gift shop and then come home.
And then sleep somewhere else where ghosts will not
I bet there's a
at the end of
great
my bed.
sushi place near the college.
There's gotta be.
Anyway, the lighthouse did obviously go through a big restoration, but it is cool. I would love to go see it. It's really pretty if you see the photos. There's a rumor. This is all. I could not find anything on this except for a few vague mentions of it, that there was a woman murdered there in the 50s, but there's no records that can show. And it was kind of defunct in the 50s. Like, there wasn't anything going on.
Oh.
So we don't know. I don't know if it was like a site of a murder where they murdered a murder. I don't know. And that's why we drank.
Yep.
Do I know how to, like, anything anymore? Can I word? Can I podcast?
Do I know things?
Where am I?
Who are you?
So anyway, I did think that was pretty fun. I would love to hear if anybody else has any good stories from that lighthouse.
Are you gonna do more lighthouses?
I probably will.
Yay.
I mean, I'm up for any good, creepy haunting. I think they're fun.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm still in Michigan for next week.
Okay.
I think there's a ton in Michigan. I might branch out just for, like, to give everyone a break and then do another Michigan. Stop hitting the microphone.
Hit the table instead.
I might do a break from Michigan for a little while and then come back and do another series of Michigan stuff. And I actually have a half-written one for Michigan that I probably need to use.
Someday.
But
you know how I feel about half-written topics.
Ted Lasso.
Someday.
So anyway, yeah, I liked this episode despite the fact that neither of us know what we're doing.
It's like the first episode all over again.
And, you know, I'm quite pleased that you also didn't know what you were doing.
I was lost. Life is just hard sometimes.
That's pretty deep, man. Mm-hmm. I did draw a cool flower while we were doing
You did.
this,
It was really cool. And I ate some gummy bears. So.
And next time we can eat cake. Balls.
So this was Dungeons and Dopamine Podcast.
You can listen to us anywhere you stream podcasts and on YouTube.
You can support us on Patreon at www.patreon.com/dungeonsdopamine.
Hopefully soon we will have Dungeons and Dopamine After Dark, and you will hear some of the stuff that we could not put in this episode that was said and or done. But that sounds dirty too.
I mean, since the minute I got here, honestly.
Anyway, hopefully we'll have that up when you get there. You can find us on Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, Insta, and Reddit.
And you can reach out to us on any of those social medias and also at dungeonsdopamine@yahoo.com.
Dungeons and Dopamine is edited and published by Argyle Pigeon Productions. That's all, folks.
You didn't do your pigeon. Okay, we love you. Bye.